The stars stretched endlessly around the ship horizon, glittering like scattered diamonds on black velvet. The hum of the engines was steady and reassuring, a sound the crew had come to trust as they traveled deeper into uncharted space. Captain Elias sat in the command chair, eyes scanning the display screens as faint signals blinked on the console. Something unusual had appeared in the readings, an irregular pulse that didn't match any known natural phenomenon. "Captain," said Mara, the ship's engineer, her voice calm but curious. "There's something out there. It looks like a small vessel, but it's badly damaged." Elias leaned closer, studying the irregular blips. "Life signs?" he asked. "Minimal," Mara replied. "But there's someone, or something, on board." Elias's hand hovered over the communications panel. "Open a channel. Let's see if it responds." Static filled the speakers for a few moments, then a faint melodic voice broke through. It wasn't a language any human had ever heard, but the tone was urgent and pleading. Mara frowned. "We'll need to use the universal translator. It's weak, but it should work." The translator hummed and clicked, and slowly the words began to make sense. "Help! I am trapped." "My ship is broken." Elias exchanged a glance with Mara. "We're not going to leave someone out there," he said firmly. The horizon altered its course, approaching the damaged vessel. The small craft looked fragile, almost like glass and metal woven together in a way humans had never seen before. Sparks drifted from its hull, and a faint green light flickered inside. The crew held their breath as the docking clamps extended from the horizon, gently pulling the alien ship alongside. A hatch opened, and out stepped a figure unlike any human. She was tall, her skin a luminous shade of silver that shimmered slightly in the artificial light of the horizon. Her eyes were large and dark, with a depth that seemed to see through everything. Her hair flowed like liquid light behind her, and her movements were graceful, almost floating. The crew fell silent, staring at her in awe. Mara stepped forward, offering a hand. "You're safe here," she said gently. The alien woman's eyes flicked to Mara, then to the rest of the crew. She shook her head slightly, her expression wary. She spoke, and the translator immediately converted the sound into words humans could understand. "I do not trust." Elias nodded, keeping his tone calm. "We understand, but your ship is damaged. You can't survive alone out there. We can help you." She hesitated, then slowly stepped aboard the horizon. Her presence filled the room with a quiet energy that made even the most confident crew members feel like children in a vast, unfamiliar world. Mara guided her toward the medical bay. "You need rest and nourishment," she said softly. The alien's gaze swept over the human technology with a mixture of suspicion and fascination. As they moved down the corridors, the alien woman paused near the observation window. Outside, the stars streaked past as the horizon adjusted its trajectory. She pressed her hand to the glass as if longing for the freedom of space, and her eyes reflected a sadness that tugged at Mara's heart. "What's your name?" Mara asked gently. The woman tilted her head as if considering. Then she spoke slowly, choosing words carefully. "Lyra, Lyra," Elias repeated, nodding. "You're safe here, Lyra. We'll take care of you until your ship can be repaired." Lyra's eyes darted to the console where the translator hummed. "Repaired difficult. My vessel cannot move. Cannot survive." The crew exchanged quiet glances. Elias spoke first. "Then for now you stay with us. We'll help you. You don't have to do anything alone." Lyra's gaze lingered on him, her expression unreadable. She didn't respond, but she didn't resist either. That small gesture of trust was a victory in itself. In the days that followed, Lyra learned to navigate the human ship, though every step was cautious and deliberate. She observed the crew as they went about their work, fascinated by their methods, their inventions, and the ways they solved problems. She didn't speak much, but her eyes were always watching, always absorbing. One afternoon, she wandered into the engineering bay. Mara was at her station examining a panel of blinking lights. "You want to see how it works?" Mara asked, offering her a small tool. Lyra's eyes widened, and she hesitated. Then, with a grace that mirrored the human's curiosity, she took the tool. Her fingers, long and delicate, moved over the controls with surprising skill. Sparks of understanding seemed to light up her face as she began to manipulate the panels, adjusting settings Mara hadn't even thought to try. Mara smiled. "Not bad for a first attempt." Lyra's lips curled into the faintest hint of a smile. She spoke softly, almost to herself. "Humans Clever. Word of Lyra's abilities spread quickly among the crew. Even the skeptical ones began to admire her ingenuity. She could solve complex problems that sometimes stumped the human engineers. Yet despite her growing involvement, she remained distant in many ways. She still refused to leave the observation deck for long, preferring to watch the stars. One evening, as the horizon passed through a dense asteroid field, alarms blared. The ship shook violently, throwing crew members off balance. Lyra, who had been quietly observing from the deck, sprang into action. Her movements were precise, almost instinctive, as she helped stabilize the ship's systems alongside Mara. Captain Elias watched in amazement. "She's saving the ship," he shouted. Lyra's focus was absolute. Sparks flew, levers shifted, and the horizon systems began to respond. Slowly, the shaking ceased and the ship returned to steady flight. The crew erupted into applause, but Lyra didn't seek recognition. She simply stood quietly, her eyes reflecting the faint green light from the repaired systems. That night, Mara approached her again. "You did well today," she said softly. "Not many humans could have done that." Lyra tilted her head. "Humans, strong. Unexpected, strong," Mara smiled. "We survive because we try even when the odds are against us. That's how we make our way in space." Lyra considered this, her eyes distant. Then she whispered, almost as if to herself, "Stronger than I thought." As the horizon continued its journey through the uncharted system, Lyra began to explore other parts of the ship. She observed the crew sharing meals, laughing quietly in the mess hall and supporting each other in small ways that her people seemed to overlook. She noticed courage, kindness, and ingenuity intertwined in a way that was simple yet profound. For the first time since her ship was damaged, she felt something unfamiliar. Curiosity mixed with admiration. Humans were chaotic, unpredictable, and fragile in many ways, yet their strength lay in their spirit, their ability to care for one another, and their determination to overcome obstacles. Despite this growing fascination, Lyra remained wary. She missed her home, her people, and the familiarity of her own vessel. But each day aboard the horizon reminded her of something new. Humans were not weak, as her species had once believed. They were remarkable in ways she had never expected. One morning, the horizon detected another signal, a small asteroid drifting nearby, glowing faintly. Lyra was the first to volunteer to investigate it, moving with careful precision through the airlock and into the void. She examined the asteroid, scanning its surface, and discovered a small cache of minerals that could be useful for repairs. Mara and the engineering team were amazed. "You found this before our sensors did," Mara said. "You're incredible." Lyra simply nodded, returning her attention to the asteroid. "Observation. Careful. Necessary." The crew began to realize that Lyra was not just a guest on their ship. She was becoming part of the team, contributing in meaningful ways that no one had anticipated. Yet, in quiet moments, she still retreated to the observation deck, staring at the stars with a longing that reminded everyone she was far from home. As the days passed, Lyra's presence changed the crew as much as they changed her. They began to see her not as an alien to fear or pity, but as a skilled, thoughtful individual whose perspective challenged their assumptions. And she in turn began to see humans differently, not as primitive beings, but as creatures capable of bravery, ingenuity, and warmth. The bond was subtle, built on shared experiences and quiet observations. Lyra had arrived as a stranger, trapped and uncertain. But she was slowly beginning to understand that survival in space was about more than technology and speed. It was about courage, adaptability, and connection, the very qualities humans seemed to embody naturally. By the time the horizon exited the asteroid field, Lyra no longer felt completely alone. She still longed for her own people, and she still missed the familiarity of her own ship. But she had begun to see the humans as more than companions. They were something extraordinary, something worth staying for, even if she didn't yet admit it to herself. For the first time since her journey began, Lyra allowed herself a small, cautious hope. Perhaps this strange, unpredictable human crew could offer her something she had never expected. Safety, friendship, and the chance to discover her own strength in a world that was vast, dangerous, and full of possibilities. The horizon glided silently through the black expanse of space, stars stretching endlessly beyond the reinforced windows. Lyra moved along the corridors with a cautious grace, her eyes scanning every detail. Each human she passed seemed to carry a subtle energy, a quiet confidence born of experience yet tempered by kindness. She had begun to notice patterns, little ways the humans worked together, how they trusted each other in moments of danger, and how they shared both laughter and responsibility. She paused outside the engineering bay, watching Mara and the team repair a small propulsion system. Their hands moved quickly yet carefully as they spoke in a rhythm Lyra found almost musical. She wanted to help, and today she decided she would try. Mara looked up and smiled as she saw Lyra approaching. "Ready to learn something new?" she asked. Lyra nodded and Mara handed her a small device. "This controls the pressure flow in the secondary conduits. It's delicate work, but I think you can handle it." Lyra's long fingers touched the controls with care, and she observed the device closely. Slowly, deliberately, she adjusted the flow, making tiny changes while Mara watched. The device hummed softly, and the readings on the monitor stabilized. Mara's eyes widened in surprise. "Impressive," Mara said. "You understand it faster than most of our crew did when they started." Lyra tilted her head, her eyes flickering with something between curiosity and pride. "Observation, understanding, necessary." Her voice was soft, yet confident. Later that day, she joined the crew for a communal meal in the mess hall. She had observed humans eating before, but today she decided to participate fully. The food was unfamiliar, yet she tried it carefully, watching their expressions for guidance. Mara nudged her gently. "It's okay to eat normally. You don't have to be perfect." Lyra hesitated, then took a small bite. The flavors were strange, but not unpleasant. Slowly, she began to eat more, her movements becoming less hesitant. For the first time, she felt a small sense of inclusion. She was learning not just their technology, but their culture, their habits, and their way of being. During a quiet moment later, Lyra wandered to the observation deck. The stars stretched infinitely before her, and she allowed herself to breathe deeply, savoring the calm. Captain Elias joined her, leaning slightly against the railing. "You've adapted quickly," he said. "Most would struggle to adjust to life on a human ship, but you seem to thrive." Lyra studied him, her expression unreadable. "Thriving. Dangerous word." "I adapt. Survival, necessary." Elias nodded thoughtfully. "Adaptation is part of being human too. We survive, not just by strength, but by learning, by caring, and by working together. It's what makes us unique." Lyra's eyes lingered on him, then drifted back to the stars. For the first time, she began to feel admiration, not just for their tools or skills, but for their resilience, their courage, and the way they valued one another. The next mission brought them to a dense field of floating debris near a broken satellite. The horizon's sensors picked up something unusual, a faint energy signature hidden among the rubble. Lyra volunteered to go outside, fully aware that the task could be dangerous. "Are you sure?" Mara asked, her voice tinged with concern. "It's unstable out there." Lyra nodded, her determination clear. "I can help." "Must help." Clad in her sleek silver suit, Lyra floated through the airlock into the void, her movements precise and fluid. She scanned the debris, her eyes catching faint glimmers of energy that human instruments had missed. She moved carefully, manipulating the objects with deft precision. Soon she located the source, a small energy core from the broken satellite. With steady hands, she secured the core and transmitted the coordinates back to the horizon. Mara and the engineering team marveled at her accuracy and intuition. "How did you know it was here?" Mara asked. Lyra's eyes met hers and she shrugged slightly. "Observation, understanding, necessary." The crew realized once again that Lyra was not just surviving, she was contributing in ways they had not anticipated. Her skills were extraordinary, yet her presence had another effect. She reminded them of their own potential, of the strengths they often overlooked in themselves. Over the following days, Lyra began to interact more openly with the crew. She learned their routines, their habits, and even their humor. She observed small acts of kindness, someone sharing their food, another offering a comforting word, a gentle hand on a shoulder. These moments fascinated her. Her own species valued logic and efficiency, but humans seemed to thrive on empathy and connection, qualities Lyra had never fully appreciated before. One evening, the horizon passed near a glowing nebula. The colors swirled outside the observation windows, painting the void in shades of pink, purple, and gold. Lyra stood in silence, mesmerized. She felt something stir within her, a mixture of awe, wonder, and longing. Captain Elias joined her again. "It's beautiful, isn't it?" he said. Lyra nodded slowly. "Beautiful, powerful, different from home." Her voice was soft, almost hesitant, as if speaking the truth was difficult. "You're starting to see things differently," Elias said gently. "Different doesn't mean worse. Sometimes it means there's more to learn, more to experience." Lyra considered this, her mind turning over the concept. Her species had taught her that humans were limited, fragile, and unpredictable. Yet here she was, surrounded by humans who were brave, clever, and compassionate. She had begun to see their strengths in a new light. The following week, the Horizon detected a rogue asteroid moving toward a nearby colony. The crew needed to act quickly to prevent disaster. Lyra offered her help without hesitation. She analyzed the asteroid's trajectory, calculating angles and velocities with remarkable speed. The humans followed her guidance, adjusting the ship's course and deploying equipment to divert the threat. The asteroid passed harmlessly by the colony, and the crew erupted in relief and celebration. Lyra stood quietly, her hands folded, her eyes calm but focused. She had not sought praise, but she felt a subtle satisfaction in knowing her contributions had made a difference. Mara approached her afterward. "You were amazing out there. Not many humans could have done that so quickly." Lyra's eyes softened slightly. "Humans, capable, more than expected." The crew began to see her not as a fragile alien, but as an essential member of their team. Her presence had changed the dynamics of the ship in subtle ways. Her insight, her intuition, her ability to observe and adapt. She had become a bridge between worlds, showing the humans that cooperation and understanding could overcome even the most dangerous challenges. Yet, despite her growing admiration for humans, Lyra struggled with her own feelings. She missed her home, her people, and the familiar routines of her own culture. There were moments when the longing for her own kind overwhelmed her curiosity about humans. She would retreat to the observation deck, staring at the stars with a mixture of nostalgia and yearning. One quiet night, she found herself alone in the deck, watching the distant glow of a star system. Mara joined her, sensing her restlessness. "You think about going back," Mara said softly. Lyra's eyes remained on the stars. "Home, people, different. I belong here, not yet?" "You don't have to decide right now," Mara replied gently. "But maybe it's okay to stay for a while, to see what this life can teach you." Lyra considered her words, the simplicity and truth in them. Perhaps staying with the humans didn't mean abandoning her own people. Perhaps it meant discovering strengths and qualities within herself she had never known. Over the next few days, Lyra began to explore even more actively. She learned to repair human equipment, to assist in navigation, and even to interact socially with the crew in ways she had once found alien. She discovered humor in small jokes, the warmth of shared meals, and the comfort of simple companionship. Captain Elias observed her quietly during these days, noting her gradual transformation. She was no longer merely a visitor. She was becoming part of the ship's community. The humans, in turn, were beginning to respect her not just for her skills, but for her courage, her intellect, and her growing ability to connect with them. One afternoon, Lyra was in the medbay assisting with minor repairs to the ship's sensors. A small mishap caused a brief electrical surge, and she instinctively protected a human technician from harm. The crew around her gasped, realizing the depth of her commitment, not just to the ship, but to them. Mara placed a hand on her shoulder. "You've become one of us, Lyra," she said softly. "Not just in skill, but in spirit." Lyra's eyes widened slightly. Spirit. She had never considered the concept in the same way her species did, but watching these humans, seeing how they cared for each other, how they faced danger without fear, she began to understand. Perhaps spirit was the very thing that, as the Horizon continued its journey, Lyra found herself thinking less about leaving and more about the life she was discovering aboard the ship. Humans were unpredictable, imperfect, and yet astonishingly capable. She had been trapped on this ship, forced to depend on them, and in doing so, she had discovered not just their strengths, but her own. By the end of the second part of their journey, Lyra felt a subtle but undeniable shift within herself. She was no longer merely an observer. She was a participant, a contributor, and in ways she had never expected, a part of this human crew. And though she had yet to admit it fully, a question began to stir in her mind, one that would soon demand an... The horizon drifted through a quiet sector of space, the stars casting pale reflections on the polished surfaces of the ship. Lyra stood at the observation deck, her silver skin catching the dim light, her eyes fixed on a distant nebula that swirled in shades of violet and gold. She had grown accustomed to life aboard the ship, yet the question of her future pressed ever more heavily on her mind. Her people had detected her location and were on their way. Soon, she would have to make a choice. Return to the familiar comfort of her own world or stay with the humans who had become an unexpected part of her life. Captain Elias entered the observation deck quietly, standing beside her. He said nothing at first, allowing her to focus on the stars. After a moment, he spoke softly. "Your people are coming for you, aren't they?" Lyra nodded, her expression unreadable. "Yes, soon. They will take me. I must choose." Elias leaned against the railing. "Have you decided?" Lyra shook her head slowly. "Not yet." Conflicting thoughts. Inside, humans. Unexpected, different, strong. But home? My people safe? Elias studied her for a moment, then placed a gentle hand on her shoulder. Sometimes home isn't just where you come from. Sometimes home is where you find courage, friendship, and purpose. Lyra's eyes lingered on his, searching for some hidden meaning. She had never considered her situation this way. Her people were logical, efficient, and protective. They offered safety and certainty. But safety alone did not satisfy the stirrings in her heart, the fascination, admiration, and even affection she had begun to feel for these humans. The quiet hum of the ship was broken by an incoming transmission. The view screen flickered to life, revealing the sleek silver outline of an alien vessel. The ship's markings confirmed what Lyra already feared. Her people had arrived. A voice spoke through the translator, calm yet commanding. "Lyra, we have located you. Return with us immediately. Your place is with your people." Lyra took a deep breath, her hands clenching slightly. She had trained for obedience all her life, yet she found herself hesitating. She had survived because of humans. She had learned, adapted, and even saved lives on this ship. Could she leave now, knowing what she had discovered about herself and these humans? Captain Elias watched her quietly. "The choice is yours," he said. "We will respect it, whatever you decide." Lyra turned away from the view screen, her gaze shifting to the crew members moving about the deck. Mara was nearby, adjusting a control panel, her expression thoughtful. She looked up and smiled gently, acknowledging Lyra without words. Others were performing routine tasks, unaware of the momentous decision about to be made. Lyra's mind raced. Her people offered security, familiarity, and belonging, yet the humans offered something she had never expected: freedom, trust, and a chance to be valued for who she was, not just her abilities. The more she thought, the more the choice seemed clear. But clarity came with fear. Defying her people would not be without consequences. She moved to the communication console, her fingers hovering over the controls. She spoke carefully, her voice steady but firm. "I refuse to return. I choose to stay." The view screen flickered as the alien voice responded, tinged with surprise. "You defy us? This is unprecedented. You belong with your people. Why would you choose them?" Lyra's eyes did not waver. "Because they are human. They trust help create. They are strong in ways my people do not see. I belong here." Now silence followed. The crew around her held their breath, sensing the gravity of her words. Captain Elias placed a reassuring hand on her shoulder. "You made the right choice," he said simply. "Your courage defines you, not your origin." The alien ship hesitated in space as though struggling to comprehend the refusal. After a tense moment, it disengaged its approach, sending a final message. "Very well. Your choice. But remember, Lyra, you are not free from duty. One day, you may regret this decision." Lyra's chest tightened at the warning, but she felt an unspoken strength rise within her. For the first time, she understood that freedom was not merely absence of restraint. It was the ability to choose, to face consequences, and to shape her own path. Over the next few days, life aboard the Horizon resumed, but with a subtle shift. Lyra was no longer merely a guest or an observer. She was a full member of the crew, her decisions respected, her ideas valued. She continued to assist in repairs, navigation, and exploration, Yet she also began teaching the humans small techniques she had learned from her own people, blending their knowledge with theirs to create solutions neither could have achieved alone. Mara and Lyra spent hours in the engineering bay, exchanging knowledge and skills. Lyra marveled at the humans' creativity, their ability to improvise under pressure and their persistence in the face of repeated failures. She realized that humans did not always have the advanced technology her people possessed, but they had something perhaps even more valuable: adaptability, ingenuity, and the courage to try. One evening, the horizon entered a dense nebula filled with energy fluctuations that could interfere with the ship's systems. The crew moved quickly, adjusting shields and recalibrating sensors. Lyra's experience with alien technology proved invaluable. She identified patterns in the energy flow that the humans had overlooked, guiding the adjustments that allowed the horizon to pass safely through the volatile region. Captain Elias watched her work, admiration evident in his expression. "You've become more than we could have hoped for," he said after the danger had passed. Lyra smiled faintly, a small gesture that carried profound meaning. "I learn from humans. They inspire. They care deeply." It was not just her skills that impressed the humans. Her presence encouraged them to reflect on their own strengths, to recognize the courage and resilience they sometimes took for granted. The bond between Lyra and the crew deepened, built on trust, respect, and shared experiences. Despite the comfort she felt, Lyra did not forget the distance between her and her people. Sometimes she would sit alone in the observation deck, staring at the stars and thinking of her home world. But even in those moments, she no longer felt the longing as sharply as before. She realized that belonging was not defined solely by species or origin, but by the connections one nurtured and the choices one made. One morning, as the horizon approached a cluster of unexplored planets, Lyra assisted the crew in mapping the terrain. She marveled at the humans' ingenuity in analyzing data, making decisions, and responding to unexpected challenges. She had once thought humans were fragile, unpredictable, and limited. Now she saw them as resilient, resourceful, and full of potential. As the day ended, she returned to the observation deck. Captain Elias joined her, and for a long time neither spoke. They watched the distant stars, the unknown worlds waiting to be explored. Finally, Lyra spoke. "I understand humans now. Not just clever, not just strong, but brave, kind, inspiring. I never thought I could see such things. My people do not appreciate this, but I do." Elias nodded. "Humans have a way of surprising even themselves. You've discovered something rare, not just in us, but in yourself as well." Lyra looked at him, her eyes reflecting a mixture of gratitude and wonder. "I choose this life. I choose humans. I choose Horizon." From that moment, Lyra's place on the ship was no longer temporary. She trained alongside the crew, participated in missions, and even suggested improvements to the ship's systems based on her unique perspective. The humans, in turn, relied on her insight, respected her experience, and celebrated her courage. Weeks passed, and the Horizon continued to chart unknown sectors of space. Lyra had grown comfortable, confident, and deeply connected to the crew. She laughed, shared stories, and even joined in the crew's small traditions, learning their customs while sharing fragments of her own culture. The ship had become a home, not just a refuge. One day, while observing a distant star being born, Lyra spoke softly to Captain Elias. "I thank you for patience, trust, guidance. Without humans, I would have only survived. With humans, I live fully." Elias smiled warmly. "You've always had the strength, Lyra. We just helped you see it. You belong here, and we're glad to have you." Lyra looked around the ship at the humans she had come to respect and admire. She thought of her people, of the world she had left behind, and of the warning they had sent. But she knew in her heart that she had made the right choice. She had discovered a life richer than she had ever imagined, one filled with courage, connection, and purpose. The horizon moved onward, stars rushing past in brilliant streaks of light. Lyra stood at the observation deck, her silver hair catching the glow of distant suns. She was no longer a trapped alien, no longer a stranger aboard a human ship. She was part of the crew, part of something larger than herself, and finally, she understood the true meaning of belonging. And as the ship sailed deeper into the unknown, Lyra felt a quiet joy that she had never known before, a joy born of discovery, of friendship, and of choosing her own path among the humans who had shown her the strength, courage, and spirit that made them truly extraordinary. The stars stretched endlessly before them, and Lyra smiled. For the first time in her life, she felt completely free,